Welcome to In Context, the new podcast from St. Paul University, where we explore the big questions that shape our society. Today, I had the opportunity of sitting down with Catherine Clifford, who's a professor of theology, whose interest has led her to study the role of women in the church, and who has basically sat at the heart of the process, the recent synod. This conversation was a rich and inspiring one that highlighted not only the challenges facing the Catholic Church today, but also the hope and possibilities for transformation that lies ahead. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And also, please leave a review, especially if you liked it. That way other people will find out about it. As for our French-speaking listeners, or our Francophiles, I invite you to also tune in to our French podcast, USB en Conversation, wherever you listen to podcasts. So come with me now. We'll engage in a conversation with Professor Clifford. Catherine Clifford, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be with you today.
Likewise. So, Professor Clifford, you're a professor of systematic and historical theology at St. Paul University. You've worked on ecclesiology, humanism, the development of doctrines, and your interest in the changing role of the church in contemporary society has brought you to the very heart of that change, that place of change, when you were appointed by Pope Francis as a delegate of the 16th Ordinary General Assembly of the Synod of Bishops. What does this mean exactly? What does a synod entail? And also, more importantly, you're a woman, a layperson, and you're not a bishop. So why were you at the Synod of Bishops?
Yes. Well, big questions. So a synod is a gathering. The church is an assembly. The church is the gathered people of God. Yeah. And the church has been governed historically by gathering together and discerning together the questions facing the church at different moments. And since the Second Vatican Council, we've had a new institution, the International Synod of Bishops, where a representative body of the world's bishops meets regularly every 3 or 4 years to deliberate on important questions. It's essentially a consultative body, and it gives advice to the Bishop of Rome, to the Pope.
Right.
So in this last 2 years, in 2003 and 2023 and 24, there were actually 2 sessions, 2 gatherings, or 2 assemblies of the synod. That was part of a longer 4-year process that began back in 2021. Right.
And so the bishops met, but then you and others were invited
yes.
later on, or were you integrated very, very much from the start of that process?
We learned, I think, just in the summer of 2023 that we were invited. And Francis had intended, in previous synods, other men and women, lay people, religious women, other members of the clergy have been present. For example, if I think of the Synod on Youth back in 2015. Yeah. So there's been a desire to kind of enlarge the conversation so that the bishops are interacting directly with people who are experienced and working sort of on the front lines of the issues that are being discussed. What was unique about this last assembly of the synod was that Francis invited 10 delegates from 7 different regions around the world, so 70, an equal number of women and men.
Interesting. Was this the first time? Or?
Yes. Hey. Yeah. So that and gave them a voice. So we were able to participate fully as delegates at the synod. To contribute in meaningful ways to the elaboration of the documents, to the debate and the discussion, and also to vote. So to vote
Right.
on the every time a report went from a discussion table, all the members of the table, they all vote on the contents.
Mhm.
And then the members of the synod also approve every individual paragraph of the final documents.
So you have people from 7 regions across the world, and this really truly is the world, because
Yes.
the Catholic Church reaches pretty much everywhere.
Yes.
And how many people are we talking about? Because you said around the table.
So there
how
are
many
365 people in all.
Okay.
And so 70 non-episcopal delegates. So 70 plus 10 representatives also of the religious men and women superiors. They have organizations in Rome representing international bodies of religious men and women. So 80 non-episcopal delegates, 54 of them were women.
Okay. And around that table, did you have people from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, the Americas?
Yeah.
And what surprised you, and what did you discover, and what did you see others discover in you, and what you brought to the conversation?
Well, the goal of this synod was to reflect on how the church can become more synodal.
Right.
So that this style of governance and shared discernment and shared decision-making can serve as a model for the governance of the church, not just at this big meeting in Rome, but at every level of ecclesial life. So that the kind of conversation or the style of conversation that took place there will be replicated in your parish pastoral council, in your diocese, in your diocesan pastoral council, in the council of priests for a diocese. And so this was a very different style of meeting. In previous synods, there's a hall in the same building where we were meeting where the bishops would have sat sort of theater style in an auditorium. Yes. And they would make speeches at each other for an allotted time. Yeah. And then they did actually go and work in breakout groups according to language groups. But it wasn't a really productive process all the time. And Francis did something back already in 2018. He made it a requirement, a canonical requirement. So he changed the statutes for the synod and said, before you come to the meeting, Bishop, I'd like you to consult your people. Not to have an online survey, but to meet with your people and listen to them, because they have experience and wisdom of these questions, and we need to hear them. The Holy Spirit is at work in all the people of God. So don't just tell us what you think. Tell us what's the lived experience of the people of God where you live.
This is a major shift in policy and practice.
Right.
And it's coming from the top.
Yes.
It's encouraging a bottom-up approach, a little conversational approach, that real assembly, yet it's coming from the top. So has it trickled down everywhere yet?
No, we have a huge job now to do to implement this way of being church together. And so the meeting of the assembly was not the end of the synodal process, and the final document is not the end. Okay. So we're now embarking on a 3-year implementation process. Right. And I should go back and say more about this style of conversation. Sure. It's really, and this is what I think was the most important learning for all of us who were part of it. And it began with conversations in parish and diocesan groups that filtered up through the conferences of bishops to the synod office, so that we were listening to the lived experience of the people of God around the world. And in our tables, these conversations took place in a context of prayer. Okay. And no bishop was directing the conversation. There were facilitators at each table, and we were 10 or 12 people at each table. And we'd be women and men from really every continent. We were there in language groups, or sometimes we had indicated a preference for one of the questions that were being studied. So I could be at a table with people from 10 different countries around the world. And everyone had the same amount of time to speak. Nobody could dominate. So the extroverts couldn't dominate and the introverts would be heard.
Right.
So we had a facilitator at each table. And between each exchange, we really listened to everyone prayerfully. We take a moment of silent prayer to pay attention to what we were really hearing and what moved us. Not in an emotional sense, but to say, where is the Spirit here? Where are the issues that we need to pay attention to? Where do we see the possibility for new life? And
And this mechanism you're describing sounds ideal for many environments, and I'm thinking that we could learn from this. In universities
but it's a very rigorous asceticism of listening and listening deeply, and this is the hardest thing to learn. It's not an efficient way of governing anything,
right?
But it's a really important way to build community. And it enables us to really hear the other and to hear what God is doing in the lives of other people.
Right.
In very diverse contexts. And it also helps us understand, oh my goodness, we're not going to find a uniform solution to all of these issues. And so every local church has its own particularities because of the culture and the history, and so, but we could still hear beyond the diversity of approaches, even to questions like different forms of ministry or
Such as?
Well, I just think of the ministry of the catechist in Africa is something quite unique, and there's not a parallel, I think, in our own context. There are just different ways of doing things in different contexts because of culture. And that's okay. That's as it should be. But we can, because we've created a space for listening to each other, we can learn and receive from each other and say, well, that's a great example. That's maybe I could take that example and adapt it to the place where I live.
Right. So this is a real space of listening, of discernment, sort of the antithesis of today's society where everything's going so quickly and we need to respond immediately. And you were in a space, and you were in Rome with delegates from around the world, slowing down time. And the church moves in centuries. It's 2,000 years old,
but
right?
the time is important to let these questions mature and to help us arrive at a consensus.
And did you arrive at that consensus?
The principal consensus is, this is so important. We want the whole church to experience it and to live by it.
Right.
So we're convinced that we're touching something essential in the nature of the church. This is the kind of community we're meant to be, where everybody is valued, where all the baptized have something to contribute, where we trust in the Spirit at work in the lives of all the baptized, and we value the contributions of everyone.
So this in theory is absolutely amazing. In practice, it will be complicated because you were selected. Everyone in that room was selected for their qualities, their knowledge of the church, their insights, the depth of their thinking and faith. It'll be interesting to see what happens once you do this exercise in completely different environments, right? Where there isn't that viewpoint, the various perspectives coming from all over the world at once.
Right, and a lot of people, and including many bishops, entered this with a lot of misgivings and a lot of fear.
Yeah, sure, yes.
And there's an anxiety that, a fear that creating this kind of participatory culture will take something away from their authority. And I think their experience I don't know if once we really enter into this kind of process, it's hard not to be changed by it. When we really encounter the other as they are, when we really hear them, we discover that we can learn from others, that we don't have all the answers, and that we come to a better decision or a better picture of things when we pool our experiences together.
Right.
So, in a sense, a good pastor who learns to function and preside over a community where this kind of conversation takes place will take better decisions because he's getting better advice and recognizes the diversity of competencies of people present in both ordained and non-ordained people.
Right. And that's an important aspect, the non-ordained people, including many women.
Yes.
And this is something that I've been noticing over the past few months, maybe 2 years. We've seen some important women named to major positions at the Vatican. I'm thinking of Sister Raffaele Petrini, who now serves as the president of the Pontifical Commission and Government of the Vatican City State. So my understanding is she's like the vice president of the Vatican State.
She's like a state governor, if you want, a small mini state of the Vatican.
Which is, it's quite impressive. And
yes.
I've had the privilege and pleasure of meeting her on a few occasions, and she is absolutely brilliant and formidable. And as soon as I found out that she was named that position, I thought, wow, of course, yes. Rome's in good hands. Sister Simona Brambilla was named prefect of the Dicastery of Institutes of Consecrated Life and Society. So a nun.
Yes.
And, this is an extraordinarily important part of the church that might have been neglected historically.
And it's the office where the majority of people who are affected by their policies are religious women.
Right.
They outnumber religious men almost 3 or 4 to 1.
Wow. And now they have a voice at the leadership level.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Barbara Jatta, who's been named the director of the Vatican Museum as well. And of course, Sister Nathalie Bécard, with whom I think you work closely in the context of the Synod, who still serves as the Undersecretary of the Synod of the Bishops. From the outside, I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, this is extraordinary, symbolic, massive change. Women are now acceding to these very important positions and visible and audible positions. Is this truly new, or are we forgetting historical roles?
It's not entirely new.
Right.
Back in 1967, Pope Paul VI appointed a lay woman, Rosemary Goldie, to be the Undersecretary for the new Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, and for the laity. And there were other women at that time in some of those offices. And Rosemary Goldie had been herself an auditor at the Second Vatican Council. There were 23 women present as auditors.
Okay.
So those women did not have the right to speak or address the Council Fathers and had no vote. But they did participate in important ways as consultors in the drafting of some sections of the documents on the laity and the pastoral constitution on the Church in the modern world.
So how far we've come.
Yes. Yeah.
You were not just seen, you were heard.
But this is really overdue.
Yeah.
One of the goals and one of the most important recommendations of the final document of the Synod is that women be present in all decision-making bodies at every level of the Church. So that's pretty remarkable. And it's also recognized as an urgent issue. There was a document that summarized that consultation process that preceded the assembly of the Synod. Okay. And it said the topic that had the most space in that document, which was entitled "Enlarge the Space of Our Tents," was the topic of women and women's experience in the life of the Church. And it was said very clearly in almost every report from 112 conferences of bishops and from every continent, women do not feel valued and respected. Women are the majority of people in the pews. Women are doing carrying a heavy load of pastoral ministry in different ways, in different contexts all around the church, all around the world, and don't feel valued, and their ministries are not part of the stable structure of a local church.
Right.
Or they don't have support. I mean, I think of our own theology students.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of our students at the first and second cycle level are women, and they have no support from their local churches, no financial support, no accompaniment for vocational discernment or pastoral formation. And you know, when they some of them are doing remarkable work and playing leadership roles in not just parish ministry, but as canon lawyers, as chancellors of dioceses, as you know, leaders in diocesan curia, or doing work in adult faith formation or religious education.
So it's essential work, it's care work, pastoral work, and yet
we've been slow, very slow, to welcome and fully integrate their gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And now the bishops, the synods, have said, we hear you.
Mm-hmm.
We hear you, and we're making a commitment to saying, you know, at every pastoral council, in every diocese, should have a substantial and important presence of women, qualified women.
Right.
They're,
of course. Yeah.
And also that more women be directly involved in the formation of candidates for ministry in seminary programs.
Interesting. Which is a scary thought for certain people, I'm sure.
Yeah, but this has to be, we just said this is essential, that even the experience and the model of seminary formation must also be synodal.
Right. And so women have been noticed, have been heard, are starting to be valued in senior leadership positions in the curia. Well, the elephant in the room, I guess, must have been part of this discussion. How can we value their role more clearly? You know, was the discussion around ordaining women priests? Was it brought forth? Was it something that people wanted to talk about? Because what you're describing, like the next logical step following this historical perspective, seems to be an opening to considering this possibility, right?
Right. So the question of ordaining women to presbyteral ministry was raised by several bishops who said very clearly, the reasons that have been given for the non-ordination of women to the priesthood don't make any sense to young people today in my church.
Bishops were saying this.
But the other question that I think is much more alive is the question of ordaining women to diaconal ministry.
Right.
So Canadian bishops in the past and very recently Latin American bishops at the previous synod on the Amazon region had requested the permission to ordain women to diaconal ministry.
Okay.
Because many of them are already doing that work.
Right.
In the Amazon region, 80% of the Catholic communities have no residential priest.
Okay.
And who's running the show? Women. Many religious
without the
women.
Recognition, without the salary, without all of that, right?
They're the effective pastoral ministers, they're preaching, they're leading the prayer, they're witnessing marriages, they're baptizing children. So the bishops are saying, we'd like to integrate them into the sacramental structure of the church. And there is a historical precedent for ordaining women to diaconal ministry in the past.
So this has been done.
This has been done in the past. There are opinions are divided. Some about the meaning of the laying on of hands and what that signified for these women in the past. But I think we can't look to say I mean, I think we have to say, what is the ministry that the church needs today in order to meet the pastoral needs of the church? And that's why the Latin American bishops keep asking for this. Now, here's one of these issues where there's probably not a consensus in every region of the world on this question, and there are many cultural differences in attitudes towards women and women in ministry. But I think we can see an increasing presence of women in Asia and Africa who are also obtaining theological degrees and engaging in teaching ministry and pastoral roles. And maybe those ministries won't have the same form in every context, but I think, the question is a live one. Now, there have been 2 recent study commissions on the question of women's diaconal ministry, and there was a study done in 2014 on the diaconal ministry by the International Theological Commission. So there's lots of work that's been done. The Synod delegates asked the Pope, why haven't the reports of those commissions been published?
Oh, they haven't?
They have not been published.
Oh, okay.
And then this was one of the questions. So there was a whole host of issues that evolved from this consultation of the people of God around the world. And it was clear the Synod is not equipped to deliberate and decide all of those questions. But we didn't want to drop the ball. So we said the job of the Synod is to reflect on and give guidance as to how we can become a more synodal church.
Right.
These other issues, the Synod office and the Council of the Synod went to Pope Francis and said, these are very important questions and we can't deal with them in the context of the Synod, but we think they're important enough. Would you establish study commissions so these issues will be pursued and invite these commissions to make concrete recommendations to the Pope? So there are 10 study commissions that have been working since the summer of 2024.
Right.
And they were initially to present the results of their work to Pope Francis in June of this year. Their work was interrupted and delayed by his death and the election of Pope Leo. And now we expect by December 30th of this year, they should produce a number of reports with very concrete recommendations.
What fascinating times.
Yeah.
This is actually very exciting.
The Council of the Synod met with Pope Leo in Rome in May and established 2 more study groups.
Okay.
One of which is on the liturgy.
Right.
A question that is kind of coming up, but to say, do we see ourselves in the liturgy as it's celebrated where we live? Do the ministries and the way we celebrate the liturgy, do we see ourselves reflected in the way
through the practice, not the text?
Yes.
That's why I hesitated. I was like, what does that mean?
But there could be still more flexibility for adapting Eucharistic prayers, and there has been in the past, to the local context.
Right. Right. Of course. So exciting moment. This is not the church I grew up, in the 70s and early 80s. There was a fundamental shift or desire for synodality, for true communication. What will be the measure of success of this process? You said it's ongoing, and you were blessed to be part of this and to contribute. Like, what would be the success of this process, let's say, in the coming decade or so?
My hope would be, and this is a learning objective for my course on the church, which I'm teaching this semester.
Perfect timing.
That every member of our church communities have a deeper understanding of the dignity of their baptismal vocation.
Right.
That they understand that they are the presence of the church in the world, and that they share in the responsibility for the mission and the life of the church. And that means not just focusing on what happens in my parish on Sunday morning for that one happy hour every week, but that everyone can leave the Sunday liturgy and go into the world very conscious that they have a witness to give wherever they live, in their family life, at school, in the workplace, in the business world, on their farm. That's where they're called to live the gospel. And it's a vital witness. So that's what synodality means. In a sense, we're all in this together.
Right.
We're all co-responsible. And so if we live this well, we're effectively mobilizing every member of the church to be intentional and consciously aware of who they are as Christians, and to be equipped to be discerning Christians in a very complex secular world.
Absolutely. So there's a call to action in what you're saying, but a call for discernment, which is extraordinarily important right now. Catherine Clifford, thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like you're opening all these doors, and we'll be fascinated to see what happens. But you're also telling us, don't just sit back and watch, be active. And I've heard it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good to be with you.
Likewise.